Welcome to this talk on what you are doing wrong in your culture plan. I'm Kathy Gladwin, and this is my colleague, Oscar Zaborowski.
Hello,
How are you
everyone.
doing?
I'm great. How are you, Kathy?
Good, good. Thanks very much, Oscar. Good. So we are joining you from STC, your training provider, and QTC, your consultation provider. So culture, this is a topic that generates a lot of discussion in our courses and when we're consulting as well, right, Oscar?
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Always comes up.
And we spend loads of time on it, right? But for good reason, because it's really important that we get it right as a business. So in this particular clause that we're looking at here, 112, we see that BRC wants us to come up with a plan. And I think something that people struggle with is how to know what to do. Isn't that the problem?
Yeah, I think people really are a bit struggling of getting actually a plan ready, to start a plan. They will maybe have some activities, but actually the BRC standards request you to have a clear plan, for the development and continuing improvement of your food safety culture. And it means that we should be looking at a piece of document. What is your plan?
That's right. If it ain't written down, it didn't happen, right? If an auditor cannot find objective, documented evidence, yeah, there's going to be a problem. Yeah, absolutely. We need that plan. So what a lot of people will do is they will use questionnaires or surveys, staff surveys, to get this baseline data that we need to measure ourselves as a business to see how are we doing? What are we good at? Because it's fantastic to recognize what you're good at, but also what are we not so good at? And then that will help us to come up with these defined activities. But you don't necessarily have to use questionnaires, do you?
No, you don't have to. You can already set up your activities and maybe review them a bit more frequently, I guess, and then to work out your baseline, or you can already look what's happening in the business at the time when you're starting your plan, as to your level of complaints, as to the feedback that you already have from your employees, or anything like this.
This is true.
It's gathering all that data, right?
Mm.
How do you think the business is doing?
Exactly. Because overall, we want to measure as a business where we are and how we've improved as a business within each activity. Those activities have to be smart as well, specifically measurable, so that within each pocket of activity, you can also clearly see that continuous improvement. But we want to do it as a business too. Yeah, absolutely. So let's take a look at some of these activities that must be included in your documented plan, right? The first bit is about communication. I've got a separate video on communication. Training. Right. Now, we need to do training anyway. In 7.1, it tells us to train our staff. So, Oscar, how do you think this is different to what we have to do anyhow?
I think when it comes to training, some people I already had this, when visiting sites or when auditing or during the courses, they're mentioning that, oh yeah, we already have, training program, we're training people on SOPs, we're training people on our work instructions, on any procedure within the business. We already have, we're sending them for trainings or HACCP trainings. But the thing is that we must already have this as part of the section 7.1 anyway.
Yeah.
So we're looking for something more than just training on your SOP, or more than your just training program for each employees. So we're thinking about maybe mentoring, coaching people, train your people as to, how to grow professionally. We're talking about professional development and not only how to operate a piece of machinery or how to recognize allergens or pest sightings or things like that.
Nice one. Agreed. In terms of feedback from employees, there's actually lots of different ways to get feedback, isn't there? We've talked about questionnaires or surveys, for example. Can you think of any other ideas on how to let people speak up yeah?
I think the feedback, as you mentioned, the most common one would be those surveys, those questionnaires. But I think that, we are missing something here as well. I think we need to do a little bit more again, as to maybe do like one-to-one interviews. I've seen people been doing one-to-one interviews on a weekly or a monthly basis with their direct manager. We can have the different suggestion boxes, located in the canteen, when people can freely put something that maybe, will improve the company or how you are, operating a piece of machinery or how you are actually communicating in a company. So all that kind of feedback, I think it's very valuable, and we need to provide staff with those different, variety of feedback activities, I would say.
Nice. It's the variety that's important, isn't it? Yeah, yeah. Because it doesn't help relying on a suggestion box and, you check it once a year and all you find in there is an empty crisp packet, or a chocolate bar wrapper.
That's right.
So, yeah, or something even more insulting than that. A lot of people say to me, it's not my fault if nobody wants to fill in the questionnaires. You can't force people to fill it in, and it's anonymous. So how do you know who did and who didn't? It doesn't have to be anonymous, by the way. But then I say to people, well, why didn't you give them the time to complete the questionnaire? Yeah, sure. They're busy on a shift. They've worked so hard all day. And then you want them to sit there longer when they're supposed to go home or use up their tea break to fill in the questionnaire. Give them the time. Get a whole bunch of people in a room and sit there and say, please, it's anonymous, but there are 50 people in this room or 20 people. When you leave, I want to have 20 completed surveys, and give them that time, make it paid time.
Them. Exactly. And we must engage them and not actually, as you said, it's for the purpose of the food safety culture of the business. So yeah, I fully agree with you, Kathy.
Yeah, we need to make these things happen. Yes. Facilitate these activities. Behaviors is an interesting one, isn't it? Because people look at this and think, oh, what am I supposed to do? Well, the behaviors required to maintain and improve the product, right? This is about, I kind of like when they say culture is what people do when no one is watching, isn't it?
Iceberg picture that we always have.
Is there anything you'd like to say on that behaviors?
I think when it comes to behaviors, I think we want people to care, and how do it comes back to the senior management as to how do you make sure that people care about their job, about what they're doing, about the safety of the product. And I think that this is the whole purpose of that section, is make sure people do care about what they're doing, and they actually observing others. If someone is new coming in the job, for example, an agency worker or something like that, we want to make sure that they also, even if they're not a team leader or not a supervisor, we want also them to look after those people and make sure that, as I said, we all care, we all here, we all feeding those thousands of mouths a year, and we want everyone to be safe, really.
Awesome. The next point there, performance measurement, that's also one that people struggle with. Yeah, performance measure of activities relating to the product, safety, etc. And people think, what performance measures? Now, these performance measures or the data that we're talking about here can be exactly the same data that we're using in the very next clause for objectives. So clause 113 is about having KPIs or site objectives, which also relate to performance measures of product safety, quality, etc. So the most common objective or business KPI that you will get related to the BRC standards is customer complaints. Just an example. There are others, of course, but let's take customer complaints as an example, right? That is something that is directly related to product conformity, isn't it?
Yeah,
and
right.
If you take that data and use it as a business KPI, the business can look at it periodically and say, how are we doing as a business? If your complaints have gone up, we're doing not so great. If your complaints have gone down, we're doing much better, right? And you can use the same data to tick this particular box, right? The same data, customer complaints. But when you review that data as part of the culture plan, you can say, hang on, how come our complaints have come down? And you can say, yes, that is because of all the effort we put into the behaviors, of our staff, the fact that they're paying more attention on the line, or the fact that they spoke up really quickly and stopped us from sending that batch to our biggest customer, and we can directly relate it to all the effort we're putting into culture. Does that make sense to you, Oscar?
No, it does. It does fully make sense, and I think you've explained it well. And I think, as you said, I've seen some non-conformances from auditors raising that actually, you can't measure those activities. How do you measure them? How are you putting actually any figures on that? And this is where people are like, oh yeah, but how do I measure culture? And you've just explained it. So yeah, that's great.
It. That's it. No, you're quite correct. On each of these, we've got to come back to the activities being smart. You're quite right. There's got to be a defined measurement. It's got to be time-based. We've got to be able to show that whatever we're doing is paying off, essentially. Nobody wants to waste their time, right? So, yeah. Good. So those action plans, smart. We must remember to then periodically review how we're doing. So that's the reviewing of the effectiveness. And then, of course, formally review the entire plan at least annually. I hope this helps. It's unfortunate to get non-conformities against the clause where the business is trying to do something good.
That's right.
So you want to do something good and also get recognition in terms of getting a good BRC grade and not just losing out because we didn't tick some of these boxes. So
just one more thing on the clear and open communication on product safety. Some sites decide to use their monthly management review and say that, oh yeah, they've covered that activity. But we do expecting something more than your monthly management review meetings. So we've got already different section, different clause requirements that cover the monthly meetings. So that's why these bullet points for this activity, we're expecting something more.
I think that's a really good point, Oscar, that you make there. And it's again where people are trying to use conformity to other clauses to tick some of these boxes. We always have to, we can take what we're doing for other clauses and use it to contribute to what BRC's intention is behind these bullet points. We can use it to contribute, but again, we have to say, and how is this influencing culture, or how is business culture impacting? Yeah. So clear and open communication. It's things like, do we all have an open door policy? Are staff confident to say this isn't right?
Yes.
Right. It's not just a monthly meeting, like you say.
Exactly. And that also comes back to the feedback from employees where, we're thinking that the feedback, oh yeah, but we already have our confidential reporting system in place. Yeah. It's not our fault that no one's actually reporting anything. But, how do we engage people to report? And here, again, though that activity as to the feedback is different to the confidential reporting. We want, to engage people. We want them to be confidently, getting back to you with any suggestions for that continuous improvement. I've seen WhatsApp groups, I've seen Teams groups, or whatever other system that they're using, and everyone is communicating. And yeah, is how the management engage you and really give you that confidence to be able to feedback.
I like that. This video is about how people are getting it wrong, but it's also how people can get it right. And it's so encouraging to see when I was auditing several years ago, and when culture first came out, the culture plans were pretty lame, to be honest. And what we see these days is so much more encouraging. And it shows that ultimately, as you said, Oscar, it's about people caring, isn't it? Yeah.
Right.
It's been lovely chatting with you. I will say goodbye from STC and QTC. Thank you very much for watching.
Thank you. And don't forget to subscribe.